Make sure that we give everyone a chance to speak to us. So we begin with roll call.
Director Crum?
Here.
Director Keith?
Here.
Director Nas?
Here.
Director Little?
Here.
Jefferson Stan?
Yes. Next item is to approve the agenda, including the consent agenda.
Support. Question on 3D6.
Let's approve the agenda and then we'll go on.
Want to approve first?
Approve the agenda, then we'll go on to approve the consent. Two separate motions.
Yes, I have a question on 6.
We haven't gotten to that. We're just approving the agenda. Be a question on approving the agenda?
No, it's 86.
It's item 6 on the consent agenda.
Okay. Let's get to that. That's the question.
All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Opposed? Now move to the consent agenda. Where's your pleasure?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Please, Larry, you have a question?
D6.
Okay.
Give me a one on the second sheet.
Yeah, every year they have a community program that includes 12 months of that we put public service announcements on the radio. We do it every year, and that's
What do we put on this sheet?
different public service announcements each month. Jerry had read one, the communication department puts together, some regular public service announcements, and then this is in addition to any kind of times that they want to interview somebody or something like that. These are more advertisements for public service announcements.
It's not part of our public relations.
It is part of our communications program that we approve, but this amount is in the budget every year, and we've done it for I don't know how many years. Yeah, for the last probably 10 to 15 years, we just have public service announcements that we work with the radio station.
I'm saying that point was it's not part of the public relations contract that we have with health.
No, it's not.
I have a question too, Jack. I have a question regarding the minutes of May 20th. Last time in those minutes has to do with an update on the electric revenue bond issue. In minutes state our financial advisors recommend moving forward for approval of the electric revenue bond issue before the bans expire at the end of July. Dave, did you tell us why we were recommending that and should it be in the minutes? Update on the electric revenue bond issue. In minutes state our financial advisors recommend moving forward for approval of the electric revenue bond issue
Discussion that we had.
before the bans expire
What we're doing
at the
today.
end of July. Dave, did you tell us why we were recommending that and should it be in the minutes?
So that we know how we're going to handle the bans as part of the bonds. And I think the primary discussion we had here was, if you remember last month, we talked about the turn off provisions of the ban and when we need to pay and that sort of thing. And that if we use the turn off provisions in the ban, the first payment for the ban would not be until likely after we issue bonds.
And the question is why they recommended proceeding with the revenue bond issue before the bans actually, expire.
Again, I I'm not sure if it's worded exactly. If your question is the minutes actually reflect exactly what you said? Maybe not. I think what we talked about is that the bonds will be addressed and our process will be established so that we know what that replacement source of funds will be when they terminate. And what the financial advisors were recommending is that we fully understand what our bond process is and timeline is before they expire on July 30th. So if the minutes don't reflect exactly that, that's what we were talking about, if I remember it. And I don't think the bond, they did not recommend, because we are not going to issue the bonds before the end of July, when the ban expires. It was more a discussion about the process being established and understood, the resolutions approved, that sort of thing, before the ban expired. So the public, everybody would know what we were planning on doing to finish that process.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I guess, John, I would welcome a change to that, or suggest a change, to change that, or change that sentence to suggest that our financial advisors recommend establishing a timeline to issue bonds before, because I think that's more in line with what we were talking about. Would that be agreeable to from the amendment to the minutes to make sure that it actually reflects what we thought? Well,
Okay, agree. Agree. So, no further comments or questions. All in favor?
just before I want to point out specifically, because we're getting this quarterly, and I included it on the consent agenda, MPPA's new position report that they started providing. I've included that as part of the consent agenda. I don't have anything to add. I think we were putting it on the regular agenda, so I could talk about it, but I really don't have anything to talk about, but I just want to make sure you see that the MPPA's position report on the next 12 months plus future years is included in your package under your consent agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on now to approval of minutes.
That was done as part of the consent agenda, so you're on item 4 on the whole contract.
Okay. Public comment is now open. We do have a few guidelines. We ask that you find the place to speak in with the speaker. We are having a 3-minute warrant, and keep us on that. Anyone who has any comments would like to step forward? Would like to have your name and address.
My name is Jim Hagan. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. My name is Jim Hagan. I'm a regulator at 400 Lake for the last 30 years. And what I want to talk to is it's come to my attention recently that the BLPs had discussions with some of our community leaders on the ability of the 12.5 megawatt peaker to provide power in the event of a complete grid failure in the winter time. So I heard that, yeah, it can provide heat for everybody. And I think this is a mixed message because I've seen on the FAQs it can. So I just want to encourage people, if this is really being discussed, that it's published so that everybody can read it and properly comment on it. Thanks.
I miss you, because you're behind me, feel free to stand.
Yes, Henry. So my name is Albert Champagne. I'm a recent graduate from Brandon High School. I don't live in the town. I live in the township, so I don't have power from you guys, but I help I'm here to represent the senior class as the senior class president. So I come here today to represent the youth in the community who feel that the Board of Light and Power specifically has done little to no due diligence in protecting the community, Harbor Island, and its future. I want to thank the two members that are voting against the bond measure and to express my frustration just for the other three members. Thank you.
My only comment is we were working on this for about 5 years. And we were looking at all of the professional organizations we work with, we've done a pretty good job of doing that. Next.
I know it's surprising, but well, time. It's impossible. All right, here we go. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and I live at 1120 South Harbor Drive. Good public policy is based on the inclusion of all stakeholders, the sharing of pertinent information, having robust discussions, and respecting various points of view, so that the final product or decision can be one that everyone agrees was thorough. Yours? Yes. Sorry. All right. Want me to repeat or start again? Start again. Okay. One more time with feeling. My name is Jeffrey Miller. I live at 1120 South Harbor Drive. Good public policy is based on the inclusion of all stakeholders, the sharing of pertinent information, having robust discussions, and respecting various points of view, so that the final product or decision can be one that everyone agrees was thorough. Your side might not have gotten all that they wanted, but it was fair and the decision makers have done their due diligence. However, even as we meet here today, we are still in a worldwide pandemic, with Michiganders still dying every day. You still hold your meetings at 4 p.m. on the third Thursday of every month, when most working people cannot attend. And you haven't held any in-person meetings in public participation in over a year and a half. And now you want to proceed with the ask of council to approve the issuance of $50 million in bonds. This is the biggest decision for Grand Haven in a generation. Not only that, but is this proposal today, some people believe that the Board of Light and Power is going to be asking council for their approval on July 6th, when families are vacationing and not much attention is being given to legislative matters. This is not good public policy. I want to refer to the Great Blue Grand Haven Board of Light customer satisfaction surveys that are often pointed out. And they are exactly that, customer satisfaction surveys. They are not public opinion surveys. How do I know? As someone who worked at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan, and as the former director of operations for ABC News' political unit, I can tell you these are not public opinion polls. In my opinion, the Board of Light and Power doesn't have a clue as to what the public's view is regarding these matters. And it seems that they don't want to know. The recent 5-0 vote by City Council overturning the Board of Light and Power's recommendation regarding the disposition of the old diesel power plant was yet another demonstration of how insular the Board of Light and Power has become. What about retailers? Retailers such as Sweet Temptations, Michigan Kite Company, J. Morgan Jewelers, Buffalo Bob's, and the Michigan Rag have all let it be known that they want to pause in the process. And let's not forget about industry. The headline in the Grand Haven Tribune says it all. Area business leaders reject BLP bond proposal. That was signed by 11 of the BLP's biggest customers. And that was based on the assumption that the BLP was only going to be getting the bonding for half of the eligible $75 million. In the article from just 2 days ago, Nelson Jacobson, chairman and CEO of the JSJ Corporation, was quoted as saying, even if you approve only half of the bonds you authorize in the notice of intent, your actions will result in substantial financial harm to your constituents. I asked the board what Mr. Jacobson's reaction would be now that you're asking for $50 million in bonds. Haste makes waste. Better to be safe than sorry. We've got the last paragraph. You can read it at bedtime. It will put you to sleep.
Good afternoon. Andy Carthen, 50 Howard, Grady. Better? Better. Andy Carthen, 50 Howard, Grady Haven. We're the Life Power customer. And my comment has to do with the remediation of Harbor Island. And related to the bond issue, it seems like it's premature to go to a bond issue if we don't know the final cost of remediating the island. And until the discussions with legal and EPA are concluded, I would say that cost is open-ended. Might it be more prudent to wait until we know what that cost is before we move to a bond?
My name is Walter Davis. My name is Walter Davis. I live at 209 South 3rd Street. I want to begin in something that may surprise all of you. I want to thank Dave Walters for a friendship that we have managed to attain by having a very long email and personal correspondence about all of these issues. Dave was totally giving in his response to all of my questions, and although we differ, I want to thank him. Secondly, I notice, as we all do every day when we read the paper, another example of the situation that our planet, though not necessarily our city, is up against. Latest NASA report indicates that since 2005, the amount of heat that our planet traps has roughly doubled. Now, I know there are many people who think the larger planetary situation does not impinge on our life. And that's a sad thought. I know there are also probably still people around who think global warming is a hoax, or that we ought to seize the biblical possibilities to ravage the earth and gather in Megiddo. The fact of the matter is that everything we do locally impacts globally. And we don't only have a local responsibility, we have a global one. But I want to talk briefly about a friend of mine, and Nate. I tried to present this position to him, and he kept saying, yeah, but it's nice to have a backup. That was his position. And I think it's probably a position of anything. It's nice to have a backup. Indeed, it is nice to have a backup. It's also nice to have a planet. And maybe you face that issue. Maybe we all face that issue in some way. Grand Haven is protected in many ways. What's happening 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and I can tell you, it's probably not going to impact directly on your lives. So you can think you're in some kind of haven protected from all of it, but then you are abrogating your responsibility as a citizen and as someone who's responsible not for just for now, but for the future. I think it has been manifestly demonstrated that any more investment in natural gas technology is destructive of the planet. I want to add one final thing on this, because I know it's not to have a backup. I notice many people here are workers at the Board of Light and Power. And I faced a situation where I thought, as some of you may think, that your job is dependent on that plant. I'd be between a rock and a hard place. Because I'd say, what is my responsibility to my family? What is my responsibility to my world? And that's not an easy choice. So I think one of the things we could do, if people who work for the board think that their jobs are at stake, I think one of the things we could do is take a sense of the House motion at this meeting that no jobs will be sacrificed if we decide not to have a natural gas plant. Can we do that? Excuse me? Okay, I'm proposing that motion.
I would like to speak on behalf of the board for that, right now, is the assumption that anyone here in the yellow suit will lose their job, whether we have a power plant or not. It's already been determined, it's already been promised to them, that as long as they're working for the BLP, they will have a job. And additionally, because the power plant it's not going to be run that much. The amount of people that we have, the amount of staff that we have, everything will be, the amount as far as staff goes, there is no change whether we build a power plant or not. Right? The power plant is not causing either more employment or less employment at the city goes forward. So that in that regard, that is already been provided.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Van Putten. I reside at 122 Crescent Drive and I'm a customer of the Board of Power and Light. I come to you today to urge you not to proceed with this bond issue and not to build a plant. I've spent 21 years of my career as an environmental attorney, 14 of them as an environmental litigator. Much of my legal experience in litigation involved mixing zones and water quality. That was the area of law in which I specialized. I no longer actively practice, but believe that the plans to date, which haven't really been adequately shared with the public concerning remediation, present significant issues for Grand Haven, and that those issues need to be resolved and identified before proceeding with the bond issue and before knowing what the financial and legal liability of Grand Haven may be. Thank you.
Work, I guess. My name's Kurt Lettermoser. I live downtown 117 Washington Avenue, and we've lived in Grand Haven about 10 years. And I agree with the gentleman before me that I think we should say no to the bond issue, take a pause. Just the aesthetics of Grand Haven, I think everyone agreed, are probably some of the best in the state. And let's look at this as a prime piece of property, downtown, whether it's replacing the Sims plant, that property should be more discussion throughout the community of what it could look like. And I don't want to disrupt what you've done for Light Power. We're a customer, but let's just take a pause. We all came through a lengthy pandemic where there's not a lot of discourse. I'm just saying we'd like to see some different discussions moving forward. Thank you.
I'll try to keep it 3 minutes. My name is Dr. Nicholas Petrangelo. I'm an anesthesiologist by trade in occupational medicine. I've been in this community since about 1982. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. There's everything that seems to be in our world now, politics included, is bipolar. I'm going to quote, I'm not a politician, I'm not a poet, I'm not a philosopher, but Aristotle always said the golden mean. It seems like there's two poles here that are opposing each other pretty diametrically. We could just give you a little background of why I got involved as an anesthesiologist. Measure, we take care of the ventilators in the ICU, so I was very concerned. I got involved in environmental issues many years ago, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, because of what people breathe in the air. Because I was seeing some of the effects of smoking, air pollution, whatever. That's how I got into photovoltaics, a company called Power by Sun, and a battery company called Harding Energy. I live in the real world. Okay? This is not theoretical, this is real. And I am a scientist, and I don't practice pseudoscience. A PhD, Dr. Patrick Moore. Anybody know who he is? If not, look him up, he's on YouTube. He is the founder of Greenpeace. His PhD is in environmental science. After 17 years, he left his child, Greenpeace, because the green movement became so radical. And I think that's what you're starting to see today more and more and more. Let me point out modern day. if you stop all natural gas, okay, what's your substitute? People will freeze to death. I've seen many people pass away for many different reasons. In the ICU, in the operating room, in the emergency room, people are going to die. They're going to die of lack of heat. That's about as basic as it gets. And besides that, if you don't want to buy that scenario, is everybody familiar with the decarbonization fuel going from wood to coal, to oil, to natural gas, to hydrogen? That's happening as we speak. If you take natural gas off the progression towards hydrogen, you know what? You're going to go back to wood. Burning wood, a much more higher carbon fuel, for what? So people can save themselves and their family. I know what fear is all about, all right? We all live in fear of this, fear of that. That's real. Okay? So you might want to take a look at Dr. Patrick Moore on YouTube. Sorry? Any questions afterwards? I've been in solar photovoltaic 35 years. I know what to do, what I can't do. I've been in batteries right down the street, Harding Energy on Taylor, for 30 years. I know what batteries can do and can't do. And I appreciate everything this utility has done. They've answered some very tough questions, especially Dave Walls. He knows what he's doing. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak?
My name is Bo Reither, and I'm the president of the union here at the Board of Light Power. And it is our hope that you guys move forward with the plan and vote yes on the bond proposal. We think it's a good plan for the community. We think it's a good plan for the ratepayers moving forward, which some of us are ratepayers, and we think it's good for the employees moving forward. So we want to offer our support to the board to vote yes on the bond issue. Thank you.
Does anyone?
Good afternoon. My name is James Clifford. I live at 555 Unit J, Kidley Circle. I got this flyer in the mail, and of course, my first question is, who the hell sent it? But it became clear to me that there's something here that needs to be looked at, paid attention. So a friend of mine suggested that I come here, and I did. And so let me just share with you some thoughts I had. The first one is Flint, Michigan water treatment system. Anybody can run a water treatment system, can't they? Apparently not. Let me tell you the second thought, maybe it should have been first, is more recent. COVID-19 pandemic. Who pays attention to the experts? They just get in your way, right? 600,000 people are dead because we didn't pay attention to the experts. You should have some experts talking to you. I'm not one of them, so I'm going to sit down. But I appreciate if you take your time. This is a serious issue. I think it's something somebody has said this will last for several generations to come. I guess the time here. If that's the case, maybe you should take one generation to figure it out before you make the decision. Thank you very much.
Hi, Annette Allen, 15718 Grand Point Drive, customer of the BLP, and someone with over 35 years experience in the industry. And I'm here to speak up in support of what the board is doing. You know, as you know, you've listened to me a lot. Probably good, I only have 3 minutes here. I've always said, I love the environment. I wouldn't live in Grand Haven if I didn't love the environment. But as a utility, you need to pay equal attention to reliability and affordability. When I was working, I know that every time that the power peak prices spiked on the grid, I got to the point that I would go and I'd look at what wind generation was expected and what was actual. And every time there was a significant gap in those, and that's when power prices spike. You need something to provide that reliable, affordable power for not only our residential customers, but we have a large group of industrial customers. And I'm sure if you ask them, they'd say reliability is tops. That's what they always told me. Batteries may do it, but I did some looking today. And if you go out industry standard, what's going on, consumers and Detroitites and both, when they're showing what their long-term plan for generation is, everybody has a piece of gas generation in there. Gas is the quick start, reliable backup that in case the wind doesn't blow or the sun's not shining, that to ensure that the customers have that reliable, affordable power supply. If we're relying on other utilities' gas generation to provide that peaking power, we are putting our costs in their hands, not in this utility's hands. And I feel this utility is where that cost control needs to be. Thank you so much.
Jerry McKeown, 1235 Slayton, BLP customer. And I also want to encourage the board to go ahead with this project, with this bond issue. I think it's very important. Grand Haven has a history of self-sufficiency, taking care of itself. We have our own water system, we have our own waste disposal system. And I think that to have a backup system on Harbor Island would be that hedge that would protect our community from all sorts of things. It's something that's quick on, quick off. It will protect our downtown and our snowmelt system. And I think that, overall, it is good for us to build this, again, like Dave said, it's not going to be running all the time with natural gases. Way cleaner than coal. You can't get away from pollution, period, unless you want to leave the planet. It's a very resilient planet. It takes good care of us. And I think that we owe it to ourselves and our community to build this project on Harbor Island, to continue to mitigate Harbor Island and take good care of our community, our employees, and ourselves. So and all the BLP customers. So I appreciate this that this moves forward, and I'm all 100% behind it.
Anyone?
Andrea 100, 1514 Familiar. I do want to say, I do appreciate there is a lot of decision makers in this room. I see a lot of people that have been part of this community and made decisions for a really long time. And you have moved this community to where we're at right now. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that you're still in the game. And I'm also thankful that you have been thoughtful. You've been forward thinking for a long time. However, what's happened in this process is that we have taken away the ability for this to be a collaborative effort. I don't think this has to be polarized at all. I think that we can have a genuine conversation about the future energy of Grand Haven. We do not need to continue to railroad the process. And that's exactly what's happening here. You have over 1,000 people that have signed a petition, not saying, no, we don't want to do this. They're just saying, let's just pause. Let's just look at things. Because the people that have made these decisions have some flaws, okay? We are looking at cyanide in the groundwater that has not been announced yet. We are looking at PFAS. Wait, it's coming. You know it's coming. And you've known it for a month. And you have not told the community yet.
That is not true.
Okay, it's my time to speak, I get 3 minutes. I don't want this to be polarized. I want this to be a community discussion. If it was just me that wanted this, I would not be up here. I'd be sitting at home doing something else with my time. But we have had a boiling over of community engagement regarding this process. And all you're doing is not giving the community an opportunity to do it. We can do better. 1,000 people have signed a petition. 200 students have signed a petition just asking for us to look at the community sustainability plan for the city. You had your time, and we're thankful. We want you to continue being involved in this community. But at some time, it's time to pass the time. It's time to sit and have a conversation with the young people of this community of what they want. You are not going to be alive when the consequences of this action actually are felt in this community. And that's not okay. Thank you.
Sean Cook, I live at 15417 Pine Street, right outside of the township. I've worked here for over 25 years, and I appreciate everything you guys have done for us. I think you've had a good plan. You've been at this since 2016 when you set this motion in process. You had town hall meetings that I was at, and I don't remember some of you up back then here. You say we didn't have public meetings, we did. They had public meetings, they had sit down with their largest customers back then. It's all on their website. I appreciate and I hope you guys move forward with this. Thank you.
Annie Boujou, my name is Shannon Donnelly. I live at 15857 Rucker Street in occupied Grand Haven in Will County. I want to thank the 2 board members who are supporting your cause in the master plan. I have been at these public meetings since 2019, so I have been involved. I've been on the website and I have looked for information to find out what was going on in the background of this issue. I'm here as a water protector today. Not just a customer, not just the vice chair of the Michigan Democratic Party Environmental Caucus. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, and I have friends in both of the peninsulas. The fossil fuel and extraction industries are becoming as extinct as their sources. Putting natural gas pipelines anywhere near Harbor Island is a bad idea. It really is. The island, the ponds, the river, it's all connected. What we're doing to one, we're doing to all of them. So all of you who are enjoying your time in Grand Haven, imagine what'll happen if we keep pumping more pollutants into our waterways. We need to take a pause. We need to take a step back, take a breath. We need to wait for the actual total what this is going to cost. One of the things that disturbs me about this master plan is that there's no continuing monitoring of the intermixing of the water flow. Their original engineering firm has said, well, we're going to put these permits in place and try and find, make sure that we're only cleaning up our own mess. We don't clean up any other messes. Eagle said, you need to bring it down to the levels we need to see. We've had intermingling between the river and the ponds already out there. Like I said, I'm here speaking for the water. The water's in danger. It has been. The total needed for this ridiculous plan is not enough to keep the water safe. It's not, we need to wait for the remediation to be complete. We need to wait for the technology to get caught up so that we can put sustainable energy on that island. Reliable, sustainable energy. $45 million could go a long way to invest in these workers, invest in the island, in other ways to protect the water. Let the river heal. Fossil fuel and, like I said, extraction industries are going the way of dinosaurs. The future energy of Grand Haven is not worth a plaque on a frickin' peaker plant on the island. You're looking for a legacy. Why not make your legacy be one of forward thinking? Why not make your legacy not be a plaque on a plant saying, thank you for building this beautiful natural gas thing? Why doesn't your legacy be a plaque on a park or affordable housing? Thank you for my time. But think of what you can do. What else could be better than just a plaque with your name on it?
Anyone else? We'll now move on to the general manager's report, which is number 5.
First item 5A is 6 items for purchase order totaling $347,000. Description as well as return management report. Staff recommending approval in mass.
Move to approve.
Support.
Comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Item B1 is your annual decision to opt out or into the 2021-22 low income energy assistance funding mechanism. Thank you all for participating in this annually this time of year. For the audience that's here, the state of Michigan imposed fee surcharge on customer bills for funding of low income energy assistance in the wintertime. And they allowed municipal utilities the opportunity to opt out of that program. Grand Haven has historically opted out of the program and not used the state program to fund its own program. And last year, we had a significant discussion on this during the COVID timeframe, and we had a split vote as far as whether we wanted to start opting in. About 90% of the customers in the state of Michigan are served by utilities that opt into this program, and the average or the cost right now is 91 cents per customer per month. Large, small, we would pay 91 cents, goes into the local energy assistance fund. The BLP funds that program in its own fashion, but we have the information in front of you that highlights our arrears and backup. I think the discussion that we had last year, the staff understands your positions. We probably are going to give more to the program than we receive back in our area if we opt in. However, staff is recommending again this year an opt-in, and primarily it has to do with how I readily admit that we collect 91 cents per customer and send that to the state. We will not get that amount of money back. That's readily acceptable. We don't have to do calculations to do that, and if that's how you decide. But what does happen, and particularly in COVID, we did see this regularly. And I just want to remind the board, and then you can vote however you want. But when people get a disconnect notice, that allows them access to these funds. If they don't get a disconnect notice, they aren't subject to disconnect, they cannot access these funds. So by us opting out of the program, what we're accepting is a zero shutoff policy for 6 months or for 5 months out of it. So the downside of opting out and handling this ourselves is that we can't shut people off in the winter time. And I know that sounds like a cruel thing, but really if we don't shut people off and send them a disconnect notice and schedule them for disconnect, they cannot access the funds through the Salvation Army, through others. And really they build up an amount that oftentimes they can't pay for in the spring. And that's why Detroit Edison, Consumers Energy, everyone else participates in this program. So again, it's up to the board. It's your resolution that you do every year. It is your decision. I understand arguments on both sides. There's arguments. Staff is recommending that we opt into the program and provide money from our customers to the program. Historically, we have not done that, and we've opted out. Again, we just need to make a decision this meeting so that we can provide that information to the state. In your packet, you have information where 16 municipal utilities last year opted in, and of the remaining of the 40, including Holland and Zealand and all of the ones in Ottawa County opted out.
We not turn people's power off, is that correct?
When you opt out, you cannot shut customers off. And we do not. And we actually extended that period, and that was COVID period this past year. We extended that, and so there was people that had bills of almost 8 months before we actually instituted a shut. And it's very difficult for people when they get that far behind. First of all, they can't get the necessary money from the assistance fund.
Well, another issue, Dave, is they understand $175,000 or more, and your charge is less than 1%. If you're about $30,000, then we can't collect. So what's the advantage of paying $175,000 if you're only going to lose 30? You lose 175, and the results are always the same. We've gone through this about many times.
We do it every year. I understand that. We do it every year, and I'm trying to explain the arguments. I understand the board's arguments. As your manager, I am recommending that we participate in the state program. And I understand the arguments and why the board has chosen not to. It's your decision, and you are the local regulated body, and if you don't want to opt out, we will opt out of the program as we have previously. I am not arguing with anybody. I understand the arguments both ways. I think the argument that we don't help people, or either way, we help people locally in two separate mechanisms. One of them is either participating in this program. Since we have chosen not to participate in this program, we still support a funding mechanism through our penalties, and we provide that to the Salvation Army. So for everyone in the room, the local individuals get support both ways. It's just a matter of whether you want to participate in the state mandated program or do the program ourselves.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question? Lynn, could you tell us what is the bad debt averaging on an annual basis? Or we have to write it off? 30?
We also contribute to the Salvation Army Fund, which is not covered. That's another 30,000.
In terms of people who need to pay their bills, about 30,000.
Yes, and then we also contribute to the Salvation Army, so that's another 30,000.
Well, I did the calculation on how many customers we have, multiplying by 91 cents times 12 months a year, just about $149,000. This chart that you gave us, Dave, which actually has 58 facilities listed, about half and half doing it, half not. What's interesting is 52% are not. Places like Holland, Lansing Board of Water and Lake, Lowell, City of Portland, City of South Bend, Traverse City, Zealand. These people are not doing this. And I agree with them. I think that if we're going to, if our bad debt is 30,000, we will be paying in 149,000. Sure, that doesn't make sense for us to participate in this program.
I think we had this discussion last year, and just for this time, I actually did the calculation. The customers represented on the left side, there's about half and half the number of utilities. The customers in the represented on the left side represent 4,500,000 customers. The customers on the right side, the utilities on the right side, represent about 600,000 customers. So 4.5 million customers in the state of Michigan participate in the program, and 600,000 customers in the state of Michigan do not participate in the program. The ones all go to the state and redistributed by this in the state program back to the communities based on the need. So obviously, if Grand Bay participates, we are a relatively rich community that will not get the amount of money that we put in. That's all you're concerned about. You're right. We will provide more money into the system than we have need within our community. If that's the only thing that you're looking at, then opt out of the program.
Actually, about $120,000 difference that we will not get that.
Correct.
That's the number.
But that money will go assist other people in other communities. That's what you're suggesting.
Well, what I'm suggesting is to pay the money out and not give it back.
Okay, any other comments? Please call the roll.
I don't think we have to have a motion one way or another to either opt in or opt out. I'll make the motion to opt out.
Support?
Support.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Key,
Yes.
Dr. Nasser,
No,
Director Rivera,
I don't want to correct your vote, the vote was for an opt-out. So by voting no, you just.
oh my God. I want to opt out, wherever that was.
I figured that's it.
For the first time ever, I'm going against the staff and say I vote. I don't want to vote.
Want to borrow my hearing aid?
Director Rivera,
You're voting against the staff recommendation. You're voting yes. Okay.
Chairperson Smith,
No.
Motion carries to 3-2. 4-1.
4-1.
I like.
The next item is a relatively routine item that kind of fell through the cracks. If you remember, over the last several years, the VLP has separated their defined benefit program from the city's defined benefit program. We did not change the benefit level, but we just separated the VLP group from the other city groups in the defined benefit program. We also have at MERS, the Michigan Employee Retirement Trust Fund. We also have a employee health savings account, retirement health savings account that we haven't separated that account. The resolution before you, the paperwork that we're asking to be approved allows us to separate those accounts so that when we're dealing with MERS and we're sending the monies in, our staff will do that and we'll run that through City Hall. It doesn't really change anything other than the fact that who deals with MERS and submits the money on our app. The amount of the program, the benefit level that's received, who receives it, all that's not the same, exactly the same. It's just somewhat of a follow through of that separation that we did. And what happened in that separation, we actually, under the MERS system, are classified as a quote independent municipality. So the BLP is one municipality in the MERS system, and the city of Grand Haven is another quote municipality. And we're just shifting this retirement healthcare savings program from the city's name to our own. And staff recommends that we approve the resolutions that are before you and sign the necessary documentation to complete that process.
I make the motion. Second.
Comments or questions?
I guess to move. And who's second? Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Keith? Yes. Director Nasser?
Yes.
Director Little?
Yes.
Chairperson Smith?
Yes. Motion carries. Next item.
Item 3 on the agenda, B3, is a presentation. It is essentially a statement on recent testing results that we received on an item. There was a comment made here, public comment, that we knew about these test results for a month. We received these test results. I received them last Monday, and we scheduled a presentation to the board at its first public meeting, and we're releasing the test results publicly tonight at the first opportunity that we possibly had. So any suggestion that these were hidden, prevented, not righted at the first opportunity possible to the public and the board, we're presenting it to the public at the same time we're presenting it to the board. In fact, the board hasn't even seen the test results. So we're going to read a statement, and then we're going to release the test results on our website. Back to release at the start of this meeting, that anyone then can see them at the same time that the Board of Light Power meets. So, Eric, you can read the statement that you have, and then we will move on.
In preparation for further closure work of coal ash Commons previous Sims power plant site, additional sampling was conducted by the BLP sampling and testing firm to determine what sort of handling groundwater to be pumped at the site would require. Results of these recent tests received last week confirmed the presence of elevated contaminant levels on the Sim site for the following constituents above regulatory criteria. These are in addition to those contaminants already present from the coal ash: ammonia and total inorganic nitrogen, cyanide, perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, PFOS. The test results are available to the public at CCR Rule Compliance Data and Information tab, the ghblp.org. This was the first set of tests conducted for chemical constituents unrelated to coal ash. A second set of confirmatory sampling is scheduled within the next 10 days to verify these results. The results in these future confirmation / validation tests will also be made to the public available as soon as possible. The BLP tested for these non-ash related compounds due to projected future remedial activities, which may include significant dewatering of discharges to the river, to draw down the groundwater near the waste deposits to facilitate required excavation of ash, which could impact nearby or underlying waste material disposed of at the site historically, and could also result in an uncontrolled release to the river. These contamination constituents are not present in the coal ash produced by Sim's operations which began in the year 1960. While the BLP has repeatedly stated that we are seeking a compliance strategy that avoids negatively impacting the in-situ materials, both ash and trash, that have been undisturbed in the ground for very long periods of time, the BLP will likely be required by EGLE and or EPA to conduct some ash removal during site closure activities. The goal of any ash removal plan should be to avoid exacerbation of contaminant levels in the groundwater or any releases of these contaminants to the Grand River from these other materials historically disposed of at the site. Therefore, testing of this water needed to be conducted before a removal strategy could be effectively developed. This new information needs to be evaluated as part of the development of the ash and common closure and future development of the Sim site.
I really have no comment other than to present that we have just got the test results. I think Eric's statement is released in its entirety, as it does suggest some future actions. Primarily, the first thing is that we're going to verify the test. I believe there was a lot of people that came up and said we need to determine, figure out what this is as its impact on our development, there's also been a suggestion made regularly that we can use this site for any number of other things. And that the test results won't affect those things, right? We were presented a opinion at the last meeting that I asked to again verify with both Eagle and the Eagle rules and EPA rules by our consultants. And the statement remains the same. In other words, we can proceed without addressing these contaminants with our development. These will definitely impact the park portion of our development. So the idea that the park remains unaffected, the industrial use of this property is allowed. The public use of this property will very likely be restricted, right? And the cleanup of this particular contamination is much more broad than what is included in our plans. It obviously will impact those. And quite frankly, we're not sure at this point in time where the contaminants are located, whether they're on the sim site or on the adjacent site. So all that will need to be determined, move forward. And we will investigate that as we're moving forward. At this point in time, all we're doing is not saying what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do, we're gonna have to work with Eagle and EPA, but the test results are on our website. And all look at what they are. These are non-ash contaminants, non-ash contaminants. In other words, they are a suite of chemicals that we were not required to sample for the ash cleanup. We chose to do these tests ourselves. We were not required by Eagle or EPA to test these. We chose to test them ourselves and publicize the results as the impact on our cleanup efforts are substantial. We would need to treat this water. This is what Eric was saying in the statement. We would need to treat this water, and if we didn't test these for these chemicals, we would then be releasing that water into the environment, and we did not want to do that. And quite frankly, in the original approved plan that we put a stop to at the end of the spring, because of the amount of water on the site, Eagle was not requiring us to test for this chemical to move forward. So it was not part of the cleanup efforts that Eagle was mandating, was the treatment of this. If we would have went forward with that, as stated, we would have had some problems. So what we're doing is we're going through that process to make sure that the cleanup efforts that we do utilize do not bring harm to the environment. I think that's what our statement suggests. I would encourage y'all to read the statement and look at the information on our website. We are as transparent as we possibly can with results. Every test result that we have tested for, in the last 2 years, is posted on our website for everyone to see.
Cyanide, one of the elements that you typically used in the canning process for mines. Do you think that is a possibility that the city don't? As we all know, is do that can
I don't think we want to get into conjecture. By the way, PFAS is also a chemical that was
put on the shoulders of water right power. But it was a contaminant that came through the city refuge system. And is the city of Grand Haven going to be liable for that in a cleanup process? Now, if you don't know the answer,
we don't know the answer to that one, and I don't want to conjecture where it is. Basically, the test results that we were required to test for the ash that are normally present in ash. We've been testing for those for 2 years. We now have tested for this suite of Part 115 rules that regulate landfills. And we tested for the chemicals that would be present from waste material. And that's where we found this stuff. So yes, we believe it's likely to come from the waste material. And it's likely for material that was dumped there during the city dump. And I think that's our concern is we need to address, what we've been saying from the get-go, we need to address the contaminants on Harbor Island holistically. Not just look at the ash and then look at the trash. We have been an advocate with Eagle. I think they would be very straightforward in suggesting that. I think that's what all of our communication, you can see the communication that we've passed back and forth to Eagle on our website. Our concern is that we address the ash and the trash together, not the ash first and then the trash. So
what are the probabilities of people stepping back and taking a look at the big picture and coming back and revising their concerns and where the requirements that they have? Is that possible?
We've Eric forwarded to Eagle the same information that we're posting publicly this afternoon. So we will be in discussions with them, and anything that we do on the island will need to be approved by Eagle. And it's likely what we've been an advocate for from day one is a consent order that addressed more than just the ash. It addresses the entire site. So in other words, when we were talking about, and we got an environmental attorney get up here, I'm sure he's fully aware of what we're talking about, is our idea was, or our thought, and I think Eagle is in agreement, that we will at some point in time have a consent order on this site that addresses all of the issues that we're talking about.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. 4.
Okay, item B4. This is a precursor to item 5, B5. I think we need to know as an organization what we're going to do before we approve the bonds for it. And I think we have been presented over the last 6 months several times a project that I have included in your packet again. That's not new information, but staff is asking today of the board before it approves any funding for the project, what it desires for us to move forward with. And I think what we have here is just a request to either approve or disapprove of the project moving forward in the fashion that it was set before you, so that we can then decide how much and what level of bonding that we would be required.
I make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded for the session. Carry on. I've got some discussion before you carry on. So I'd like to hear why those in favor of the project, which is still defined by what is in our packet. This doesn't even have a date in it, and the information that is in it is out of date. And so the question is, what are we really being asked to approve to begin with? That's my first issue with this. No detailed document to vote on. And so, if we vote on a motion today to approve the project is still defined. I've got some other issues on this. I'm sure that everybody knows that I'm not in favor of proceeding. Please do not think I am not in favor of this project. I'm in favor of pushing the pause button and having an opportunity to take someone else, look at our situation and look at some other options. We failed in the beginning, and I'll get there to manage that now. We failed to investigate other potential options for this situation we're in, for local generation. We were given 3 options by one of our consultants. Buy it all on the grid, generate it all yourself, or a combination of the two. And by the way, if you're going to generate it yourself, or a combination of the two, gas is the only option. We as a council, as a board, were not given the opportunity to look at the pros and cons of other ways of generating rather than gas. Not a good thing. We've had plenty of people, some of them right here today, have said we are opposed to carbon generation. And yes, I agree with Nick Pagangelo over here. There's going to have to be some gas used in the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to use it. We need to look at the options, folks. Our failure to solicit from the public and incorporate in the public their concerns and their ideas about what they want is another reason why we really need to push the platform. Oh yes, this gentleman over here said, we've had lots of meetings. We've had lots of meetings to inform the public what we want to do. Name one thing that the public has asked for that's been incorporated in this plan. One thing it hasn't been. From the beginning, we have a plan, we told the public this is what's good for them, and this is what you want to have. The public is concerned over investing millions of dollars in carbon-based natural gas generation that could become a stranded asset. Oh no, there are people saying, no, never won't be stranded. Guess what? 20 years from now, can we guarantee that gas will not have gone the same route as coal? That helium will have taken over? Maybe. We don't really know. The BLP's failure to accommodate the objections concerned by our major industrial users, 11 of them, wrote a letter to the city council. They said, we don't want this plan. We object to it. We're going to pass it anyway? How arrogant. How arrogant of us. If we do that. Please, don't do that. The current DLD plan contains no local generation backup. If the grid were to be attacked and disabled for a lengthy period of time, somebody give me, from the gas industry, a promise that if the electric grid goes down, that we're going to be able to get power for gas, natural gas. Fact is the natural gas industry has a grid like ours, and they communicate via the internet. And you need electricity to do that. And in most cases, you need electricity to pump it. So this idea that's been put forth that, oh, we have a backup. We've got natural gas here, 12.5 megawatts. You know, if the grid goes on, we can do digital operate. Look up the results of the congressional committee that studied this. We'll go to the internet and take a look at what the experts say. Gas, if the grid is down for a length of time, a month, more, no gas, no backup. No creditable evaluation was done on whether or not the Harbor Island building site and access roads and bridge are safe for the future 100 and 500 year floodplain level, water level increase due to climate change. FEMA sets those numbers. We've seen nothing in terms of this plan that says, you know, you don't have to worry 20 years from now because our prediction of what's going to happen is the water level will not be up. Right, the island was half underwater last year. Couldn't even use the boat launch or the parking lot, which was totally underwater. and so was the access road coming in to the highway. So when are we going to get some authoritative information from the people that look at that and study it as to what is going to happen to the water levels out there? The claims that the cost of paying the revenue bonds for the building of 12.5 megawatts of generation capacity is cheaper than buying 12.5 megawatts of capacity from the capacity market, which MPPA mandates, over the next 20 years is questionable. I've asked repeatedly, tell us your estimate of what it's going to cost us to lock up capacity for the next 20 years if we don't build 12.5, and we have to go out and buy it on the market. What's that cost going to be? And how does it compare with us building for approximately $20 million the generation portion of this project? In other words, if we go with bonds, the part of it for building the generation portion of the project, how much money is that? Plus the interest, plus the cost to generate for the bonds to be created. Compare those two numbers. We're being told that, gee, it's going to pay for itself. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'd like that number. What would it cost us to get the capacity for 12.5 megawatts for the next 20 years? Last of all, the failure of the BOP to justify building the office tech center on Harbor Island, rather than building it where the existing building is on Eaton Drive. We never got really an accurate answer. We got an estimate, but no accurate answer as to why is it advantage, what are the pros and cons of putting it out there versus putting it on Eaton Drive, and what is the difference cost-wise in getting it? Too many unanswered questions, people. Too many unanswered questions. Why do we rush to push through a major 20-year-old community commitment? Because all of the unanswered questions surrounding this project and the level of public concern, because of that, we need to push the project and understand an evaluation of all options by an unbiased qualified source before proceeding to revenue bond improvement. That's why I'm voting no. I vote for pause. Thank you.
I would like to respond to that. We have been blamed repeatedly over the last year for not listening. We have listened and listened and listened to virtually the same plea by a number of people. They now have in excess of 1,000 signatures. They now have convinced some of our biggest customers that the majority of this board, all of the employees in 3 of the best engineering firms in America, don't know what the heck they're talking about. And I can't speak for all of those, but I want to tell you, we've been on this journey longer than 5 years. It has been studied, and we simply do not agree, the majority, to the presentation that Director Nasser just made. We haven't agreed with them for all the years that we sat here, and we're not going to start to agree with them now. Thank you.
More comments on the board?
I'm going to be making long speeches here, but I think if anybody can do numbers, and those numbers, you know there's no call option. There's no capacity option on this. None. Your call option program that Harry put together with a hedge and the part 3 of the combination of the caddies and the waters. It's fine, but your call option is flawed. Why is it flawed? In the cost structure, to meet the $42 set point, you only use natural gas. Natural gas is going up 15 to 20%. That puts you set point about 40, 50, that reduces your allowable number of hours available over your historical 10 years by about a third. The $5 million you plan on receiving over 20 years is reduced. If we had normal businesses have expenses, operational expenses, zero work on machines, this call option thing does not have operational expenses in it. I don't know if you guys know that. It's only natural gas. There's no management. The interest alone on the bonds, just given the report, $24 million. It is a start to cover the $5 million that you're supposed to get in 20 years. Seriously? Can anybody do numbers? Sorry.
Well, I would like to respond to the numbers. This is the reality. Over the next 20 years, the Board of Light and Power will receive just slightly over $1 billion in income. The cost of this project is around 6% of that $1 billion. 94%, if you want to talk about numbers, will be used for business as usual. So to call this an ambitious, expensive project certainly is insane. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Little can respond, so can I.
But you should.
I don't consider a $50 million project over 30 years. Some 30, read your packet. It's for up to 30 years, Jerry. Read it. $24 million in interest on $39 million, on a $39 million bond issue. Figure it out. It's not minor, it's major. And to make it minor is to degrade the people that are here. Leaving.
Other comments?
I would really call
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Key,
No.
Director Nasser,
absolutely no.
Director Witherell,
Emphatically, yes.
Chairperson Sang,
Yes.
In anticipation of approval of the project, we have through the our financial advisor that's approved by the board, get them through our bond council, it's right. We have put together a bond authorizing resolution for the board's consideration. Some of the numbers that are thrown around, be very cautious with the numbers being thrown around. If you don't understand the numbers, please don't use them. Ask the question. Because we are not selling $39 million of bonds. Right? We are anticipating a $45 million bond issue, exactly what we've been anticipating for the last 3 years. The bond resolution includes some numbers in there. Those numbers are set a bit higher than the anticipated bond level because we are anticipating using substantial amounts of cash out of our reserves, primarily for the environmental concerns. So the environmental concerns are going to be played primarily with our cash reserves. Because quite frankly, stockholders don't, or bondholders do not want to pay for that, particularly over a 20-year period of time. So we are taking the responsibility of the community, of our community, to clean up the island, and we're using our cash reserves, primarily. The bond amounts are paid to be paid for a capital project, primarily a capital project, bricks, mortar, real projects, equipment. So, and the demolition was also, so we already spent $12 million that needs to be reimbursed. So those numbers are all contained in the project. That's why we provided you the estimate of those numbers. John, we have 50% of the construction drawings fully presented, and the architects that did the work presented the information. That particular presentation that the architect made was a summary. We have not approved any construction contracts, so they'll be coming later. At this point in time, we're looking at the overall project and the funding method.
You don't even know what the exact cost of the project. He referenced me.
He is making his presentation.
Trying to get the numbers that are contained in the bond resolution, the bond authorizing resolution that you referenced. The bond authorizing resolution is fully published and before you. It's put together by BFM and Kester Stowe and Davidson Wright. They are available on the phone to answer your questions. We have them now. We have them on the phone. There was a lot of questions at one of the last meetings about how bonds are funded and what they are done and how they're doing. What I did for you is I presented a sample run of the potential bond resolution created, or excuse me, the bond amounts and payment schedule, so that we could answer Larry's questions that he had a couple months ago about how discounts and premiums on bonds get factored into the net interest costs. We still believe that the net interest costs are going to be in that order of 2 to 2.5%. And we have a sample debt service schedule so that we can answer your questions that we had several months ago. And we also have the people on the phone that can answer those questions directly. You have them. But the bond authorizing resolution, to put this into perspective, what we did is when we issued the bands, the city council, the bond anticipation notes, the city council and the Board of Light Power approved a bond authorizing resolution. That resolution needs to be modified to allow us to issue more amounts. So this is a supplemental bond resolution that amends the resolution that we passed last year. If you remember at that time, I think the BLP had something like a single bond resolution, something like 20 or 30 supplementals. We redid all of those and put it all into a new bond resolution. And now we are passing the first supplemental to allow us to issue the bonds that we are proposed. In the levels that are proposed in the supplemental, as well as there's parameters on the bonds that we can issue. Those parameters are not what we anticipate, but what's allowed under the resolution. So what do we anticipate? We still anticipate a $45 million bond issue for upwards of a $57 million project. So the other $12 million will be taken out of cash reserves. Primarily, the cash reserves are funding the remedial activities, and the bond proceeds are primarily funding the bricks and mortar project and the demolition. So with that, I think there's about how many pages in your packet of information. You have questions on that, on the specific wording of the resolution. You have 2 resolutions before you. One resolution is a Board of Light Power resolution that approves of the bond authorizing resolution that will need to be approved by council and recommends its approval. So you have the bond authorizing resolution that will go before council and a resolution for yourselves to recommend that resolution to the city council. That's what you have before you. The only one that you need to act on is the Board of Light and Power resolution to recommend to city council the supplemental, second supplemental revenue bond resolution that they would pass then next month.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
referencing page 3 of the document, it says, the period of usefulness of Series 225 is estimated to be not less than 30 years. 30 years. And up to 50 million. Is that the number we're working with now? Because last time we talked, last time we talked, it was 20 years, it was 45 million. So what is it?
Read what you just said again, John.
I read it.
I'm not seeing where, please point out what you're reading and what does it say?
Section 3 on page 3. Cost useful life.
And the useful life is not the bond maturity life. That's the useful life of equipment. That's what we would depreciate the equipment for on our depreciation record. It's the estimated useful life of equipment. And yes, this equipment has a useful life of 30 years, as does buildings, as does all equipment that we install. Almost all of it is depreciated at a 25 or 30 year depreciation schedule. That's what you're looking at. That is not the maturity of the bonds.
What are you anticipating the length of time for the bond issue to be made?
20 years. Exactly what we've been telling you for the last 6 months.
Do you agree that this net debt service document you sent us is for $39,335,000 of principal, that we're gonna pay over $24 million of interest? Do you agree with that?
Yes, if that's what it says. I mean, I'm assuming you're looking at the right column, but as you see, again, I think you need to understand bond discounts and bond premiums, because the par amount on the bonds will not be the proceeds that we receive. Because the bondholders will pay a higher amount for the bonds so that they can get paid a certain interest rate. It's kind of like paying points on your mortgage. So the higher interest. That's correct. So the interest rate that we are on the bonds are 5%. In this particular example, these are not.
Because you didn't have power, you probably lose your interest rate down less than 3%. Possibly. I mean, I'll put it another way, you probably paid $12 million off the bill.
No, that's not correct. No, that's not correct. So the net interest cost.
Let me tell you something, I've got something here from there that says that's right.
Okay.
And the underwriter gave it to me.
Okay, I think what we need to do is ask the question of PFM to explain how they got this. This is, first of all, this is not the bonds that we're going to issue.
I understand.
It's a run of potential elements, and what this shows is that if you gain $45 million on page 1, you can see that the city will receive $45 million in this example. The $39 million is the amount of the par value of the bonds. So in other words, they're going to get $39 million of bonds. The bondholders, they're going to get paid a 5% premium or 5% interest rate on those bonds, right? And we're going to get more premium,
$9,800,000.
We're going to get they're going to pay $6 million more than the bonds that they receive. No, it's $39 million, and we're going to get 40.
The premium was 9,800,000.
They
said they paid.
So
the bondholders paid.
Again, the numbers are here.
That's fine.
We're going to receive $45 million. They're going to pay a premium on the bonds, and then they will receive their interest rate on the bonds. What we have presented to you previously, and I think that's why the PFM is here, is we presented you a debt service payment schedule, net, discounts and all that stuff, so that you as a board can determine how much money you're gonna get and receive, and how much you're gonna have to pay in interest every year. And that is the last page of the run, where you see the principal, the coupon, the interest that we pay every year, the debt service payment, and the schedule under which you will pay it off. And this is what we were talking about a couple months ago. It's the schedule to you, the city, and the VLP looks like a relatively flat principal and interest payments over 20 years at a net interest cost. In this particular run, the net interest cost is the specifics of this particular run are on page 4. And this shows a net interest, a total interest cost of about 2.6% and a net interest cost of 3.02%. It's not the 5% coupon. Now, what they're saying is that this amount is even higher than what we anticipate. Again,
And that's the yield, the interest amount, so the total interest paid is $24 million. Page 4. And if you add in the power amount, $39,235,000, total
I think what we,
debt service then becomes 63.
okay. Why don't we bring in Mr. Loveland from PFM, if he can answer your question directly on this.
Can I ask you a question or?
Well, let's-
What's the other one?
Yes, okay. Chris, can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna try to put you up on the speakerphone, so you can. We're gonna try to hold you up here. The technical capabilities of this room are not real good, so we're gonna try to have you speak. And can you hear the comments as well or not?
I can hear some of the comments and some are a little muffled.
Okay, so I will try to repeat those that you can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay, so Larry, if you have some questions specifically on the
I want
one.
to hear this kind of stuff. If they want to come in, I'll talk.
I have a question for you.
All right, I guess we don't have a question at this point in time, so,
Item 4 we just approved was providing heating power plant.
yes,
If we go and look at their cost projection, their total project cost was almost $48 million. However, it did not include the additional $10 million that we're now thinking we need for environmental remediation. One of the people that spoke up here today said, why are we proceeding with, to request authorization to issue bonds until we know how much we really need? We don't know whether $18 million is going to cover remediation or not at this point. So why are we going to go ahead with this until we know that?
because the bonds are not covering the remediation. So at this point in time, we are at, you're right, John, $57 million of the project. Estimating $18 million of remedial activity. That $18 million, as you know, just had $10 million added to it a couple months ago. So we were at $48 million project. We added $48 million project. We added $10 million to the budget when we realized that and we don't know. You're right, we don't know. So what we did is we fully consumed all of the available cash that we have to bring our cash down to the minimum cash level, which right now we have
13, what is
just the $12.5 million, the difference between the $45 million bond issue and the $57.5 million project estimate at this point in time for redevelopment. So the difference, the one that everyone's saying is, we need to know that before we bond, very little of it is going to get bonded.
What if it's goes high enough that we don't have enough cash?
We will have to do one of two things. We will either have to go out to the bond market and raise more money, which likely will be 2 or 3 years down the road, or we will have to raise rates and pay cash. So what we've done, and you know this, John, what we've done for those in the audience, what we've done in our recent rate approval, we lowered our rates effective July 1. The reason we lowered the rates is because we are generating adequate cash flow to support the $12 million of remedial activity on the island. To the extent and what we've said, what our rate consultant suggested is we will need to review that 2 years from now. They actually were recommending more of a rate reduction. So what we said is, prudency would say, don't lower your rates any further until you know what the rates need to support as far as remedial activity. So it's not a decision about going to the bond market and whether or not we know what the bond market is or isn't. But the question is whether we lowered our rates at this point in time and didn't produce the necessary cash to pay for the remediation. So the remediation is being paid for with cash primarily. Only $5 million of the remediation is being paid for with bond proceeds. The rest of it will all be paid for with cash or a future bond issue, right? So we don't need to know what that remedial activity, and we may not know for quite some time. I think it's been said is we won't know what that remedial cost will be for probably more than 2, 3, 4 years. As we get down into this, we will be doing remediation, satisfying the eagle on certain things, doing more tests, and they will then be telling us to do more. So if we wait until we know exactly what the overall bill is for the remedial activity, we won't have the money to pay for the activity that we're doing today. We have already spent $12 million. So we need to fund some of the stuff now. We need to allocate our cash reserves, a portion of them for what we know, what we think we're going to have. And then we need to update that analysis in a couple of years with our rate consultants to determine whether or not we need to raise rates or we can lower them further. And this is what we said a couple months ago. Our rate consultants were in here and recommended the rate reductions for July 1. If you look at that rate document, it will have the $45 million plus the $12 million that we're talking about, the $57 million project. That is what we utilize in determining our rates. $45 million of bonds, $12 million using with cash reserves in the next several years to fund this particular project. Plus, by the way, I think for those people that don't know, we also have a very aggressive 5-year capital plan that has even more money being spent out of our cash. So this is not the total 5-year plan for the VLP is $67 million or something like that for in the total plan. Only $45 million is bonded, and the rest of it is coming out of our normal, income that we make as a utility to fund our capital plan.
I have a quick question, Dave. You may have already talked about this, I missed it. But I mean, yes, probably the 2-year contract they couldn't be paid by cash, it was going to be paid through the bonding process.
The bans are called a bond anticipation note. In other words, they were issued as a construction loan, somewhat of a construction loan, and they're anticipated to be paid for with long-term debt, bonds. So there's a bond, they're anticipating bonds, all right?
So
Now,
on this bond program that we're talking about, and $12 million plus interest.
correct.
Hey, hey,
That's part of the 45 million is to pay off the bond.
Anything further?
I think we need, make a resolution so that we get it right.
I don't have a motion that's made.
Well,
that?
I know, I'm talking about making.
Okay, so the resolution that the resolution that you have to as a board approve is the printed resolution. So what we need from the board is a resolution to approve of this written resolution that recommends the council. And I know this is a lot of resolutions, but we have your proposed resolution someone has to make is to say, is to suggest that we approve the written board of Lake Power resolution that's put before you. And that recommends in it, among other things, a recommendation to council so that they approve the bond resolution that's attached to it, right? So you have all of the written documents. I don't think you really want Renee to read this to an
All I
applicant
read was
resolution.
just the draft wording and what you want for a motion.
We need you to approve the resolution.
The written resolution.
The written resolution presented before you that is entitled Board of Lake Power of the City of Grand Haven, adoption copy, resolution to approve the second supplemental resolution, bond resolution, and recommending approval by the city council of the City of Grand Haven, Michigan. That's
So moved. That's the word.
I'll support.
So you want us to approve something that does not indicate the size of the bond resolution? And the document does not indicate the length of time the bonds will be for, or the interest, right? All three of those things are not in there. That's what you want us to approve?
It is a bond authorizing resolution, right? So what it does is it authorizes bonds up to 50 million.
Where does it say that?
That is,
Where does it say that? I'm talking about how it's Board of Lake Power is the game, resolution to second, you know.
okay. Yes, sir, are you there?
It doesn't say it in this resolution, then
You're in the other one, or approving this one.
but you're signing this is the resolution.
Can you point out the paragraph and where the conditions, the particular paragraphs that they're approving, the parameters of the allowable bonds control? Sure.
And which document?
You guys are more like power, two-page resolution, where we have second supplemental bond resolution. If you look at the second supplemental bond resolution, supplemental, the master resolution that the city approved in July 2020, set the whole framework for how the bond deals are maybe done going forward. If you look at the second supplemental, there's a parameter section, section 10. And that has the parameters within which the sale would have to be, and would be valid, and include an actually 5% per annum, maturity.
Where,
As well as the last
what page?
30 days of September 124.
And page 11, section 10? Right.
Yes,
Yeah, the sale of 2021 bond,
correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And
So the first one,
where's the 50,000? Where? In there. Where's the length of time?
Okay, so
I'll tell you where I see it. I see it on page 3, section 4. Principal amount of not to exceed $50 million. I see it there. I see nothing about 20 or 30 years. I just think if we're gonna approve, if we're gonna ask city council to approve a bond resolution, we gotta know how much it's for, how long it's for, and the interest rate. Aaron?
okay, section 4. Esther, again, this is your document, put it in council. Section 4 contains the aggregate not to exceed $50 million number.
Right.
Okay. Where again is the last maturity date allowance in the document? The 2040,
Section
10.
Page 11.
I see it in the third paragraph of section 4. Sorry.
Which one are we going to? Third paragraph.
Third paragraph, below the 50 million, end of the third paragraph.
What?
No more than 50. We're still playing that 20.
Okay, that's the maximum 30-year maturity, but what Mr. So is referencing is on page 11, third paragraph, it says the interest rate on the maturity for the bonds will not exceed 5%. Again, this is the par value on the bond, it's not the interest rate that we're going to pay, the net interest cost. It's the 5% per annum coupon side, the maximum is 5%. And then it says, if the last maturity date of the 2021 bonds, again, this is section 10, exactly where Esther said it was going to be, is shall not be later than September 1, 2043. That is, no, excuse me, that is 20 years after the commercial operation date. Now, so there's 2 years of flexibility. When we decide to issue the debt, the last maturity date can be 20 years after the commercial operation date. That's the latest date.
The first maturity date is 23.
What's that?
The first maturity date is 23.
Correct.
2 years.
Correct. The last maturity date on the sale times 20. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to use those 2 years. We could say, and when we issue the debt, we could say that it's 20 years from the issue date.
Well, you can use the call option too, coming off of 10 years.
Well, actually, the run that you see, you paid a premium for the call option. If we're recommended to pay for the call option, you can do that in the confines of the recommendations from our finance advisor. I don't think we want to try to become finance advisors here in this room. That's why we're hiring people to do that.
Just to get this straight.
Yes.
What we're asking city council to approve is a bond issue for up to $50,000. $50 million. For up to 22 years with an interest rate not to exceed 5%. Is that correct?
The interest rate, though, again, I don't want to suggest that we let everybody leave this room saying that we're going to issue debt at 5%.
I said not to exceed 5%.
I understand that, but that's a different interest rate than what we're talking about, because these bonds will definitely, probably bear, definitely bear they will require a premium to get this higher interest rate. This isn't, I mean, you know, this isn't, I mean, John, I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to parse the language here.
I'm trying to define what we're asking them to approve.
And it's all contained in this document.
Well, it's hard to come to the interest rate that we 20 different maturity dates. You all have different interest rate, because short-term, long-term, it's got some less than 1%, some over 3%. And
That's why what we're doing today is we're approving, authorizing the bonds within parameters. You will not, again, we will go to the market at a certain date, and the market will determine the interest rate that you're going to pay. You're not gonna be able to say, Jason, this is what I want. You're gonna go to the market, and as long as the interest rates are within the parameters of which you approve, they will approve of the document. They don't plan on coming back to this board and to the city council for their approval. We're passing a bond authorizing resolution. And we can ask the financial advisors at this point in time what they think that the interest costs are gonna be in the time that we're talking about, but it will not be 5%, all right?
no, we just said what the interest cost is, we talk about the percentage of the dollars.
The
Interest
interest,
is on page 4.
the interest rate is the interest rate.
I think that's the
Well,
Jack, I'm just going to summarize where I'm at. Okay. First of all, we're approving a project that is not defined well. It's a project where we have some general parameters laid out by progressive AE, but it's really not defined. And so we're saying, well, we approve this project, and then we're going to approve a bond issue for a project that is not well defined. And it's open to all kinds of interpretation. It's open to, we really don't know what the bond issue is going to be. We know what it can be, but we don't know what it will be. I think it's crazy to even approve.
Well, if you would have went to a higher bond, we would have had a simple discussion. Say, something.
I think that is actually a good question, Chris. You may want to explain why we may or may not want to issue discount premiums on bonds. I think you can answer that question better than me, whether it's just sell a bond at a particular interest rate.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So when this transaction comes to the market, we anticipate it to be about 6 months from now. And an investor might have a preference for a certain coupon, meaning that's the interest that they will receive. So in some markets, some markets will have a high coupon, like 5%, and that will generate a premium. So the investor will spend basically $1.25, give that to the board of light power for $1 bonds. That generates a premium. In other markets, there are instances where the investor wants a lower coupon, say like something around 2.5% or 3%. And in that case, those bonds would be sold at par for $1 or even a discount. So what we're comparing when we think about premiums and discounts is the coupon rate versus the yield. And in that numbers one we have, which has thousands and thousands of numbers on it, the number we like to look at is called the all-in GIC. And we're showing that under kind of today's market conditions, which will be different in 6 months, we can likely get in and out of the market at below a 3% yield. That's kind of your borrowing cost. You would anticipate your effective borrowing rate to be 3% and we account for premiums and discounts and the like.
Thank you. It's being portrayed in the room, Chris and Esther, that we really don't know what we're doing by some, that we really don't understand that what we're going to the market for, what the amount is, what the project is. First of all, do you have any comments on that? I mean, are we doing anything out of the ordinary here, or what we see from any other client?
If I could start and turn it over to Esther, but this is a fairly common practice. As you have a new plan for facility being built, the CFO and finance team, the general manager, they understand basically what they're coming to market for an amount. It's not perfect, but it's close. And by having these parameters in this resolution, they allow people flexibility as you price the bonds. So that way we can look at the coupon rates and adjust them according to investor preferences and make a proceed you need. So that's why there's a little bit of a cushion built into the numbers. Okay? So it helps us address market conditions. So I say for a new money project, it's very common to get a parameters resolution that allows the board to have control over the final big strategy of the transaction, that allows the staff the ability to execute that transaction. I've seen this in Powell, Michigan, I've seen it in Lansing, those places right around here that continue to do these things.
Kessler, maybe this question is better for you. Can you explain the 3% or the 3-year rule as far as when amounts need to be paid or how quickly the bonds need to be spent? And the idea of choosing, I mean, we used a bond anticipation note so that we got further along in the project before we fully knew, so we could know what the closer to the amount that we need to bond. But how often do participants bond that they fully know the exact cost? And if we waited until we had the exact cost, how much more bands do we have to have? And then how much flexibility do we gain by doing it now? And at some point in time, if we keep waiting to issue bonds, won't we run into the issue of either borrowing a lot in the short-term market or also not completing the construction within the 3-year time?
Yeah, so the bond anticipation note, as Dave indicated, essentially it's short-term construction facility. And so you now can, for a portion of the project, or also allow the city to borrow at a fairly low aggressive interest rate in the interim. But you can't keep it out on a short-term facility forever. There's a day of reckoning there. So typically what happens is the bond anticipation notes will get taken out by a long-term transaction. And this is consistent with what some other utilities have done with city land and city market. They both have done bands and they're doing generation projects and long for that. So the 3-year essentially when we borrow, the city's going to have 3 years to spend proceeds on construction project for our construction. So you want to time it so that you meet the arbitrage succession. And that's the other issue that is really timing. You can't always time the market. And so if you wait and wait and wait, then you're subject to market risk. And that's probably better for planning. Because that's a financial advisory function, municipal advisory function. But, that's always a risk. Back to the parameters issue. For me, it's very common, probably more common to issue bonds with parameters than actually moving final terms. Almost all the state issues, all the state agencies that we work with billions of dollars each year, use grants. They don't have
But you don't have, I think in other words, just to clarify, you don't have the exact interest rate, the exact amount, or the exact term maturity dates known in advance on a lot of these transactions to allow flexibility in the development of the transaction to get the best deal. Correct? The other thing is the downside associated, and you guys can answer this question better than us, but I mean, given the scenario that was discussed in the room here, probably the best avenue would just be to keep issuing bans. Issue more bans, more bans, and more bans until we get to the point that we fully know the exact amount that we have, and then we issue a final amount. What is the downside of doing that?
Well, I think we're gonna have trouble finding credits in my area willing to, as you know, and that you have, and three, and that's a lot. And I think, you're not gonna find people just to do it.
So we just can't enter the market and just keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing until we know what the exact amount is, and then we sell bonds. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I think we should go for credit facilities, just continue doing,
And there, you might want to review this as well, but there was also a transactional cost associated with the bans as well, correct? And there's a transactional cost each time you enter into the bond market. So there's not a really good plan to just have multiple bond issues over and over and over again until you fully know what the exact cost is of the project. Anything, I think you've heard the discussion. Anything else that you would like to add, either Kester or Chris, to speak to the discussion that you heard here?
One thing I would say is that the municipal market and your ability to borrow funds is very strong this year. And we can get you in and out of the market, probably around that 3% level, which is a pretty nice rate of borrowing. And I think some of those states borrow that type of rate for their house, they probably refinance their mortgage. So it's pretty good market, it's a strong market, and so we continue to be pretty strong for the rest of the year.
Chris, could you also explain the role of the rating agencies?
Sure, the rating agencies will basically provide a grade for the board, and it ranges from AAA to AA and single A for most utilities, such as Grand Haven will probably be high A rated or low AA. So it's a very nice rating, it's much better than the investor-owned utilities because you're municipal entity with a strong tax position and good debt service coverage ratio. So we'll probably have a nice rating, and that's how the investors will view you and say, okay, you're highly rated, almost AAA, a strong AA, and basically they will base their deals, your bonds on that rating.
So we have to go get this rating from the rating agencies. What happens if the rating agencies look at a particular project and it's not a very good project? In other words, they look at this and go, well, that doesn't make any sense. What some people have been saying in the room here now, that this project is really dumb and it doesn't make any sense. What would the rating agency say to issuing debt for a really bad project?
Well, I think the rating agencies will not rely on the project itself. What they provide their opinion on is the ability of the utility and the city to pay that service and provide that to their bondholders. So they don't necessarily critique the value of a project in terms of it being the needs of the community or whatever
if the utility was not, if we were extending ourselves beyond what we were able to pay, or if the project was much bigger than our rates would support, wouldn't they identify that to the potential stock, or to the potential stakeholders that might be buying bonds?
Right, if the project, for example, is too large for your needs, so a huge facility, and then in anticipation of selling a bunch of power to the market, they would not like that. And they would say that in their report, that this project doesn't make sense and that puts source of risk because it relies on total capacity and relies on market sales to cover that service. So that's actually they were right about the project, in terms of the kind of provider revenues to meet the debt service requirements.
And obviously they would be, the term was thrown around here earlier, if we were funding a quote stranded asset that would be outdated and unusable before the bonds were paid off, would that be a concern to rating agencies?
Well, they would look at what is the current regulation, and they put a sentence or a phrase in there to get ready for future regulations or renewable energy requirements are. They wouldn't, especially they would look to. They wouldn't. We have not seen them take a position that utilities shall move in the direction of renewable energy or battery storage. In fact, we see that lesson learned out of Texas back in the winter time. What happened there? So they wouldn't necessarily talk about it that way.
Are you seeing any apprehension in the market? And I know you guys are the ones to review this, but from your involvement in gas facilities that you have seen financed, is there a reluctance to buy the bonds associated with those particular projects?
I would say for a natural gas project would be no. And many investors realize that this natural gas facility is kind of a necessary bridge to get to a more renewable footprint. And if you move to a renewable footprint, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years to do. And studies and technology improvements to make that happen. Now, we have seen some apprehension with coal facilities. So some folks who are coming to market, they finance purely a coal portfolio. And they're having some issues, but it impacts their borrowing costs marginally. But there are investors who are willing to buy those bonds and pay for the rating that utility buys coal bonds. But we haven't seen any concerns about natural gas facilities.
Any other questions? No. Thanks, guys. One last opportunity. Anything else you want to add as advisors to the board?
Thank you. All
right, thanks. Casper?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I believe we have a motion on the floor and a support for it, correct?
Yes. John, did you already know that? Let's go. No. Oh. Read the motion.
Motion to approve, resolution to approve the second supplemental revenue bond resolution by recommendation. Approval by the city council. Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Key?
No.
Director Nasser?
No.
Director Witherell?
Yes.
Chairperson Span?
Yes. Carries. Yeah, further, Dave?
Just the timing on this, again, the next step is to bring your resolution recommending such resolution to the city council. We anticipate doing that at your second meeting in July.
Other business? Motion to adjourn. I have one.
Oh, sorry.
This is a question, not part of the agenda. Dave, I have a letter in front of me from Barnum, attorney, Mr. Bill Ward, West Michigan Environmental Action Council, requesting information regarding the Randy Energy Organization. Are we paying our attorney to research Randy Energy Organization?
West Michigan Environmental Action Council is a tax exempt organization that uses tax exempt funds for defined purposes. It's brought to our attention that the tax exempt organization is using those funds in a particular way to promote and support political action, which they are prevented from doing. And we then asked our attorney to get the necessary documentation so that we can answer questions of our constituents about the use of tax exempt funds for political action.
No, you were asked Barnum to give specific information about the Randy Energy Organization. That's what you asked.
Yes.
Without talking to us first of all.
Just ask for publicly available information.
Don't you think maybe you should ask this board before you start investigating people who are opposed to what you're doing?
We aren't investigating anyone. We are asking for information from a particular organization that actually, if you read the Tribune in the last week, they actually addressed this situation and they were putting out information that we wanted to verify.
I'm looking at the letter, what you wanted to know, what you wanted Barnum to find out about Randy Energy Organization. Is the organization incorporated? Does it have bylaws? Who are its officers? Does it have financial statements? Are they available? I mean, that's not just general information. Seems like you ought to be asking us before you're spending our money. I'm talking about this.
Does any other board members have a problem with the request of me? I do not.
Oh, yeah, it reminds me of Trump.
Believe John, you and others have made comments about our transparency. And this group has made comments about our transparency. You're asking for the same level of transparency that they're required to provide to us. Right? We have asked publicly for this group to provide their incorporation documents, to tell us what they have and haven't done, to ask to determine where their money is coming from, and that's what we're asking for. Our customers are asking us where this money is coming from to support these efforts, and where it's being used properly. We are asking for this information so we can provide it to our customers.
Well, just know for the record that I'm opposed to what you're doing. There are motion for. Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, brother.